friends, and welcome back to the Up North house. I am following John, as you can see, up the new driveway. We have a trailer parked in the driveway and it is full of rocks. We're getting ready to use that for a couple of projects around, one of which is another French drain. So we'll start there with this video. I'll show you where that drain is going to be, and then we'll see where the video takes us from there. Thanks for joining us again. Hope you enjoy this update, and we'll get right to it. So we're here on the north side of the house. John is over there using that wheelbarrow. He's filling it with dirt. I'll show you why in a moment. I'm going to be over here working on painting these vent covers that I made in a few videos back. It has come time to paint them. Before I paint, I'm going to be caulking the joints and seams and little holes that I made with a paintable caulk that sets in a couple hours. So I'll work on that. If you remember from previous videos, when we had the basement wall rebuilt, there is a French drain system installed. There's one last section of house that will not be protected by a porch overhang or a hard surface or anything like that, and that is starting here at this bay window and going up to the corner of the house where we previously had our water brought through from the street. So it's that very back corner of the basement. It's still very good condition as far as the foundation wall goes, but it does leak a bit, and so we're going to try to mitigate some of that by installing additional French drains in this area. So that's what John's working on. He has started the ditch digging process, so we're going to be lining that with cloth and some gravel and the proper corrugated perforated pipe. He is now removing the dirt and relocating it to the backyard. So that's the first step for him. We'll check back in and see what that looks like in a little bit. And then I'm gonna get started with my little painting project back here. There you go. You know what they say, a little caulk and a little paint to make it what it ain't. So that's ready to set up and dry and ready for me to paint the rest of that. Everything seems to be sealed. And then John's up here working on the dig out. He has the ditch at the level we want it, and now I'm gonna try to get down here and show you the grade. He's gonna get the dirt that's outside here to about right here out at the same level, so that we can regrade this essentially with gravel, which will be less apt to soak in than this kind of clay rich topsoil that's collected over time. So we'll have gravel, and then the final barrier will be that French drain back by the wall. So he's got a lot more digging to do. We'll show you what that looks like as time passes, but it's a good morning to be outside. So here we go. Okay, while John is emptying another wheelbarrow, I thought I would explain the answer to a question you probably have, because I sure did when I saw this house in pictures for the first time. 70, why don't you guys just put some gutters up? Great question. Being raised in the Southeast, that was my first inclination. There's no gutters here. That's the problem. That's why the basement's failing. When in fact here, this far north in Maine, they don't typically have gutters when the house has a roof pitched this high, and that's because of ice. They end up ripping them off every year, which is not something that is a great use of a gutter. However, I will say we did discover there are gutters on the house right now. You just may not recognize them as such. This bit of board underneath the pitch of the roof here, it looks like a soffit, closed soffit or something, is actually a wood gutter. I'll zoom in. See the little pipe sticking out right there? That is a drain for the gutter. If you look up to this section, you can actually see a piece of it left from the pipe right there. That's the old system. We have found 2 other pieces of that pipe. We've also found another bracket for those pipes on another wall over here. That's what this little bracket is that's hanging up there still. It's a little thing. So they did have gutters, and one way to take care of the issue of ice ripping them off is they built them in as if they're a soffit somehow. Now, of course, that's wooden. It's gonna sit and soak in water and rot. Critters can get in there like pigeons and make homes. All sorts of things can happen, bats, all kinds of things. And we don't really know, nobody around here seems to know how they let the water into those gutters. Like, was there a perforated edge of metal or something that let it kind of drain at the edge of the roof into the metal or into the gutter? We're not sure. Nobody seems to know, but now there is a bit of metal on the edge of every roof in order to help with that ice shedding situation. So you'll have asphalt shingles to about a foot away from the edge, and then it'll be down to metal to the edges. So that's for ice. We didn't have that situation as much in the southeast. So there are gutters on the house. They no longer are open and working and are probably not the best function nowadays. We can put gutters on the flatter sections of roof, but we can't really put gutters and expect them to stay on these steep pitches. So we are mitigating that with proper drainage like this. All right, John is finishing putting up the barrier cloth on the place he just excavated. We're going to be using sections of this corrugated pipe. We, for the foundation, got a 100-foot roll, and it comes with the fabric already on it. We don't need a whole 100-foot section. We just needed 3 smaller pieces. So we got Lowe's version of the same thing. It has the perforations in it, has a little joint so we can join up the ends. But you have to buy the pipe sock to put on it. So we need to put this sock on the pipe before we lay it in there. And what this does is another fabric membrane to sort of keep dirt and smaller particles from getting in and actually clogging the pipe over time. So that's what we'll be doing next. You'll see that shortly. All right, the socks are on. John is connecting at the joints. On the ends, they have these little caps with holes in them so the water can come out, but the critters can't go in. So that's happening there. This should be about 8 to 10 inches below a gravel surface. We put the small ditch for this about this far in from the natural drip line, where the roof overhang tends to drip when it rains. The line on the ground was about here. So we're hoping to catch the water before it goes toward the wall, but not take it all the way to the wall. So we're about 8 inches from the actual foundation wall and keeping it out of that little corner so there's no like funnel effect. And then there'll be gravel packed up back to that old dirt line, all back through there and sloped away from the foundation. So hopefully everything will drain well and continue to get more and more awesome over time. First coat of paint is done. Looking good. I think I'll do 3 total because I didn't do primer on these this time because it's such a small area. So I'll do 3 coats. John has been spreading rock. The pipe is fully covered, and now we're at the point where we're getting ready to sculpt it in. So he's putting the last final bits over top so we can spread and sculpt and get the correct drainage angle. Everything's looking good. Okay, here is the look at the vents painted, as well as our French drain system all graded in. And interestingly, we just got a little rain shower, enough to perfectly outline the roof. So you can now actually see where the rain hits and where it doesn't. Our pipe for the French drain goes just on the inside of this wet line, as you remember. And now it's about 8 to 10 inches, depending on where it is on the line, below grade. And the entire grade is with gravel now instead of soil. So that is that. Now we move on to the next project. Okay, next project takes us back to the carriage house barn basement, whatever you want to call it. It's the basement that is not currently connected and accessible from inside the house. So this is the area you saw us working a couple of weeks ago now, I think, where we were reframing the door and making it a more plumb opening so that we can do a traditional barn door setup here. So I've built 2 doors. I did it in the same style I did a couple of weeks ago on the rebuild of our basement, our regular basement door. If you're interested in that process, feel free to watch that video. I won't bore you with the process again here because it's exactly the same. It's just that I measured them to fit this exact space. So our barn doors will meet in the middle, and each of them will slide this way. In order to have a slide mechanism, we need a track system up above. Of course, we've all seen the very popular barn door systems for inside houses. They're very fancy. They're not made for like actual barns, but the mechanism is essentially the same. Tractor Supply actually sells a heavy duty track system that would go above, and it has like 4 wheels that ride inside an enclosed track. Very good system. We had wanted to use that. However, this door that we have is 6 feet high. Our rafters are only 6.5 feet up. So this being a true 2x8 piece of lumber, this gap is only 4 inches. That did not leave us enough room to use that pre-made kind of track system. So we had to go to the drawing board, and what we're going to be doing is making our own track system. So at Tractor Supply, we got a piece of aluminum angle. It's kind of like angle iron, but it's made with aluminum, and it's the heaviest gauge they had. This is very sturdy, lightweight, and it won't corrode in a moist environment like this. So we're going to use this as our track. I've already got the other one up on our little header thing up here. So this is going to be our track, and we can adjust it to where we want. So our wheel will ride along the rim that way. And then at Tractor Supply, they have a whole section at the back for pulleys, different kinds of pulleys that you can attach all sorts of ways. This is actually a wall mount pulley. It's rated for 450 pounds, and we have 4 of them. Our doors will run about 60 pounds. So this cedar wood is a very lightweight, strong, lightweight, and durable. So about 60-pound door, this is plenty for that. They're made to, of course, attach like this to something, or like to a wall or something like that. We're going to be attaching them to the top of our doors, basically in this general manner. And then they will ride in our little track system in this way. So this has the opportunity to wobble, so we have to make a long bracket system that creates a blocker to wobble. So we'll be working on that. I'll show you that when the time comes. But the biggest thing is for us, when this is on its little track up here, you have plenty of clearance for this wheel to roll within the space that we have. So that's what we did. I'm sure you guys have many, many creative fixes for this. I'd love to hear about them. I'd love for other people to learn from you guys as well. So this is what we're doing. We're going to see how it works, and then if you guys have any other ideas, please let us know in the comments. right, John worked to drill the holes. He's using a taper bit or a step drill bit. This is the pack we have, and it's made for different kinds of metal. As you can see, aluminum is listed there. And if you go deeper with your drill bit, you can get a different diameter of hole. So we went to the first depth, which is going to cover the fastener we're using. These are very handy. They can go into lots of different surfaces and different depths, but they're great for doing metal. You just go nice and slow and make the hole as you need it. Okay, so we've placed our aluminum tracks just sitting up here where we think we might want them, because we need to sort of make some adjustments as far as like whether to mount them like right at the edge or a little further in. And to test all of this, we made a small version of what we think is going to be our bracket. This is what it's going to be. It's going to be very utilitarian looking. We're going to see how this works. It's basically just 3 pieces of lumber put together in this manner. We left an 8.5 inch gap at the top of our little Z-brace on each door. We want for the top of the door to ride the middle of our little board that goes across like a header here, so that there's no, gap up here for anything to get through. As tight as we can get it. It's going to have some openings, obviously, but that's where we want it to ride. And so to do that, we have mounted our little pulley this way. We measured the distance from the wheel to the edge. This edge is going to meet this edge in this way. So I can show you kind of what that looks like. We will probably, in the end result, be extending this top piece all the way down the length of the door, just to give some more, support to the bracket, and so there's no chance for wobbling and pressure in one place. So this is what we've got going on. This puts our little pulley here in this position so that it's this far from the top of our door. And when we place this up here, we can then see and sort of test where our door is going to touch, if our bracket's going to clear those beams in the ceiling and everything like that. So I think this one's going to do it. We're going to do another test one like this and hang the door just to try it, and then see if we can get this place where we want it before we build the final pieces. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. Okay, we think we now have the placement of the track. It's about a 1/16, well, maybe an 1/8 of an inch from the edge here. So that's gonna be good. What we're discussing on the video is like whether or not to raise this up, because we have more space at the top over here, but we have less space on this side. So we have to consider this is our shortest distance. So our brackets, I think, are the size and depth they need to be. We have, you can see a little bit of a gap here on some of the boards, which is nice. It's also hanging a little out at the bottom from the bottom piece, and we've left ourselves about 5 inches. So we think we're going to, we're creating this gravel trench for drainage here. But we think we're going to trim off ultimately at the end a little bit of each door so that we don't get them kind of caught up in anything, because we have about 6 inches that we could take off and let the doors kind of free hang against this bottom threshold we've created. So we left ourselves some play down here because we know we don't have play at the top. So that's where we are. The next step that we have to figure out is, now that we have the aluminum track where it's going to be based on how far wide this opens, we now need to figure out a best way to sort of support the end of the track here, and also create kind of a stop for our roller, so that when you roll the door open, it doesn't just, roll off the end into the dirt back here. So that's our next step. We have the position of the track figured out. We can adjust the length of the door and where it hits at the bottom. We're feeling good. The bracket seems secure. It's not wobbling and twisting in place. The wheel is very solid and secure in place too. So this is where we are in the process. It's one of those things. You just have to fiddle with it and see what works and adjust it as you go. Okay, here's the next look at the door. It is hanging in place. We trimmed off 2 inches at the bottom, so now we're still well within our little created threshold for closure, but it hangs freely. Everything is rolling nice and clear and solid, so now I can just pull. Of course I don't have the handles on it yet, but it just pulls closed nice and smooth and easy. Whoops, I went past the middle. There's the middle, and it closes over here. We figured out, I've got a little bit of an overhang back here, which is nice. It's to secure it. Here is how we did the stop. I did plumber's iron to the rescue again. I just made that little metal that I showed in another video up into the rafter, screwed it on, and supported this here, very sturdy and braced well. And then this little piece of metal creates that little bracket to stop the door from rolling off into oblivion. And that of course is this plumber's iron. If I showed it in another video when I made the vents. I use this stuff for so many things. Very handy. To the rescue one more time, but the door is looking great. We're going to do it one more time and move on to our next project. Final look at the doors. I didn't even notice when we were building them that we had kind of symmetrically placed these pieces of cedar that are more grayed out already, so that's cool. But they're looking good. Everything seals nice against our little frame that we built inside there. We don't have the handles on it yet because honestly I forgot to buy them, but it does open pretty easily. So there it is, our barn doors. Oh, I'm so excited. That project is done for now, and we will now move on to a cleanup of another thing I was working on. Sure does feel good to clean up a mess. We have been chipping away at the flooring and the wallpaper removal throughout the rest of the house in between things, and when the weather doesn't allow us to be outside doing those other larger projects. So each week we're taking about, I would say about a bag, 1 trash bag or so out of the house with wallpaper and flooring materials and things like that. So not to overwhelm ourselves, but we do want to try to start off next season at a good space where we can come in and start doing a little bit more finishing stuff inside now that most of the major things are getting taken care of this year as far as structural and rebuild type things. So it's coming along. We are loving the process. I am so glad you decided to join us back here for another update to see what happened this week. And I hope to see you here on Thursday morning next week at the Up North house to see what happens next.